why Falcons have been struggling. One thing that I'm going to throw into the mix, and it's a very similar thing that we've kind of talked about Furia for the past year. Furia, of course, are a team which they had, were able to do the Grand Slam in 2023, into Invite at 24. And then we seen for the remainder of 2024, that team just kind of fall away. And, Fleepox has said many times, we didn't have the energy to go again. For Falcons, they're in a similar but different position, because the similar thing is they pretty much done what Furia, did the year before. They played in every final. They played the max amount of siege that they could have. But they didn't win it. They didn't win it, which was the difference. Furia were able to go in there and win their competitions, whereas Falcons got so close, yet so far every single time. Is it a case for Falcons of maybe ran out of steam? Is it for them trying to find the motivation? Yes, of course, the motivation can be, look, they still didn't win, the majors, didn't win SI. That should be the motivation, but surely everyone at some point in their life maybe gets to the point where, is it ever going to happen for me? Second place 3 times in 1 year? Can I be bothered to go again?
It is tough, and it's always there's an interview that Liquefect did once upon a time. I think it was before we came into SI, where they said they would rather not lose it in second place and lose it earlier than lose it in second place again, because of how often it hits them, because they were in a really just rough spot emotionally after that, and you can't imagine the pain. It's second place is amazing, but you're a competitor of the highest level, regardless of what discipline you're in. Talking about you're in, they're in. I was waiting for them to finish the maneuver before they entirely fought their way into the start. No time to try and do that as MACKO Ghost gets the opening kill, gets rid of users, and now the flood comes on the back, but a second one is fed in. Solotov does trade it out with Liquefact and Akwi, finding themselves back and forth. Still haven't got out of the first minute, but now we've got one player left in a 1 versus 2 situation. Lolo and Teb on the sides here of MACKO, and Solotov, well, he's going to see if he can try and get the kit secured. Turn that 2 minutes into only 40 seconds. Will they spray through? They don't trust the engagement. Good bit of motion. Can't get the connection. They're either side of him. No, he couldn't quite get out. There was the player in blue as well, and we are off to the races, Demo.
That round feels like a lash out from Falcons. Like, you only see them whenever teams are just angry and they've just full center rush, but to see it in the first round is not what I expected. Yeah, look, they've tried to just force a blitz going straight down main stairs into church, and they've just tried to gain really quick control of the map.
Attackers have dropped the bomb.
That is just going to fall apart immediately as soon as that blitz dies, and that's what happened. Users was the first person to die. You have to credit MACKO. Could have very easily have been sleeping at the wheel, and they could have lost full site control last round. They were ready. They were, Johnny on the spot, good to go. So credit MACKO. They were ready for it. They're not falling asleep. Falcons, though, puzzling, all ready to kick things off.
There's one part of that as well that I'm a bit curious about, because the opening kill came from a Shkoposh.
10 seconds.
And obviously when you...
the location of a bomb.
Sean Connery?
It's Shkoposh. It's just fun to say. I love... This is what years of working with people like Milosh, educated people, they're often known as, drives me, is that when I pronounce operator names, I try to do it as best as possible. But I am also very aware that I'm British, so I do.
You're not going to me, Milosh, so
I'm not going to pull it off.
Language in the world.
Yeah, and I come off as a tourist that's just trying to say things louder as if it will make sense. But the Skopos in that position, obviously is playing the sort of top to the bottom. If they were in a different operator, would they have been on the top floor, and would Falcons have been able to get themselves locked in? Is that the netted reward and the preparedness there from MACKO to go, uh-oh, I need to swap back in, gets that opening kill, and maybe Falcons droned out that position, believed the Skopos wasn't paying attention, and suffered the consequence of it. That's all hearsay, that's all guesswork. Now we are making wet work happen, and it's happening across the top floor. Once again, pressure on.
Really good pace here, I think, from Falcons, just being able to move in and just open up all the exterior walls as quick as they can. The drone work's coming in. Obviously, they can still rely on some of the big, heavy hitting operators that they have, but I mean, straight away, you're seeing trades come in back and forth, but this has to benefit Falcons. You know, you've lost the smoke, which, as we know, a very important operator that you kind of need for this bomb site.
Well, now with 1:30 left on, a bit of a trade back and forth. They've recollected the kit and got themselves some of the control here on towards the bedroom side, but where is going to be the position of approach? The Blackbeard just to smash open. On the Logic Construction side, they've hidden the position here of the tucked player. Not sure if the Flores got an eyeful of Acqui. Acqui's hoping they did, and he's ready to potentially go for a swing, draw them in with the bait. Falcons aren't risking it just yet. Still going to try and get some of the Flores work done. Still going to try and get these positions, these Keybers, this back line that they have built here. That Flores drone will once again force the player out. And there's the swing. They waited. They still get the Blackbeard. They go. Okay, the grenade does net the kill. It was close, and Falcons lock it out, but almost.
Yeah, I mean, that round kind of shows how much pressure Falcons can apply because they did the groundwork early. They got the walls open, they started getting the drone work in. Obviously, the pinch comes in onto the roamers. They got a really important pick onto the smoke. MACKO down in a 4 versus 3. And at that stage, whenever all of the walls around you have just opened up, really, where can you sit? And that was a perfect example there for the Bandit. Where else could he go? You know, he had to play in that kind of wrap position. Sadly, it was actually more the Wamai disc kind of trolled him there, didn't it? Because that nade was not intended for him. That was intended to go farther into the site, but then the Wamai disc catch, he has to make the play. But again, it just shows once you open up the external walls and just any of the walls on that top floor, really, where can you play as a defender? Not a lot of places. So yeah, pretty run of the mill. It's what you kind of expect to see. And I think for MACKO, it's if you're attempting that kind of extension over towards bedroom. Look, if you don't get the kills, you're not going to win the round. Game of Siege, you have to get kills. We know that. So maybe MACKO, yes, you want to try and extend your legs. Why not go for, a mid floor take? Try and extend in towards lounge. Try and use C4 from below. Don't forget, that entire bomb site is destructible from below. So there is different ways to go about it rather than exposing yourself to windows, which some people forget that there is on Clubhouse, because there is a fair few of them.
Well, traded back and forth these rounds, and we're still going to find ourselves pushing on towards it. I'm just going to double check something very quickly, but I think running on the numbers, Solotov, compared to where he was yesterday, if we're looking at players to step up a 3K either side, not often. The big gun player for the team has been on days, has been on occasions, and was a lot more consistently with the previous team of once upon a time they used this sort of M&M dual death stack that would often lead the front on there. To him being able to come in aggressively, step up here, just needs the rest of the team really to rally around behind him.
Oh, alert from Acqui. However, won't even get a chance to kill that player as Ghost has taken his head clean off the shoulders, but still in a dangerous position, and I'm not entirely sure that Falcons know he's there.
Well, at this point, they're all not aware of anything, seemingly. There's just a shred of players across. Acqui takes some damage. At this point, it's, trying to problem solve a single player position. They've got the lock on towards it. They're going to try and pop some of the pressure onto the catch, but, with all the utility they still have, they're just throwing themselves into rough engagement. Usus gets one, does go down outside. So at this point, the position that Bride is in here, C4 is caught mid-fight and flight. He needs to try and get the pick back up. He does. They're trying to hunt from underneath as well, and it feels like we're just waiting for the inevitable now, Demo. There's at least Bride getting another, but far and far away from the end here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just padding the stats, isn't it, really, for Bride, because there's nothing happening for him. 30 seconds to go, you still have to go through, the Izami up with the barriers. You've still got to plug shields and barbed wire maybe as well. Just too much for him to really do. And MACKO, just sit in your hands. They don't need to move. Don't need to swing for him. He's not going to win this as long as they just stay put. We'll flash off the guy over towards Logi, make his way into construction door, but really this is where you expect to see the furthest that he'll probably get to. And hang on a minute, a swing from the shield, and
surely not.
Ride, I mean, yeah, planting in front of the guy, doesn't know about the second one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I convinced myself that he was never going to win it. Then all of a sudden I thought, oh, he could win it here. No, he was never going to win that.
I finally finished loading up my stats page. That decided to do a break for just a second, and I was correct. Solotov didn't have a great day yesterday. Came into that round where he'd already doubled his kills from yesterday. In fact, he's only managed 3. Spotted out there, obviously, but it was sort of, as you said, they weren't quite aware, Falcons, of where MACKO had set themselves up here, even with all the research that could have been done from the 15 rounds played here yesterday for the side of MACKO. Falcons are still missing a couple of tricks. All those tricks have just been adapted.
Yeah. Again, I think it's a case of the teamwork. You know, the fellas on the desk. Is it a desk or is it a sofa? What do we call it these days? Still saying desk.
It's, you know, there's a desk in Heart. For a long time, Fresh's social account was Fresh on Desk.
Is he Fresh on Sofa?
Fresh on Sofa.
Can we get the social change, please, Jack?
And then whatever that is in French for Leo, and then in Dutch for Anne. Yeah. To be fair, on Dutch, it is probably just Anne une dusk, because it often is very close to us, just a couple of letters different.
Yeah, it was the teamwork. You know, that's what they said, and I think right now you can see that clear from Falcons. They're losing these engagements, they're losing these gunfights, and nobody's there to response. You know, I think for a team of Falcons caliber, they should never be 4-2 down within the first minute of a round. That shouldn't happen for this side. Is it a case of communication? Are they not talking to each other? Is that an issue for them? I don't know, but I think yesterday, and certainly already from what we've been seeing in the opening few rounds of this matchup, Luke, it feels like individuals.
Sorry, Anne messaged me correcting my Dutch. In fact, telling me that they use the French word bureau, which they don't borrow from English this time. Thank you, Anne. I love that. And yes, you're right. At this point, with the minute gone, with the pressure here across the top, they're going to see if they can try and just swing their way around, scared of everything, and there was a fist fight that broke out, but the pistols start to pop either side. It is shaky. The smoke canister is just thrown onto the door, but they are being surrounded and encircled, blinded again. But look at Usus's health there from that close quarters engagement. Lolo did everything that they could, but it just wasn't enough.
Very lucky to be alive. Usus, he really is. And oh, ShyCo has just slipped down blue. Catches Amp Ghost. Had no idea he was there. And that's because there's nothing stopping him. There is nothing stopping a crouch walk coming down towards blue or any of the staircases for that example. Where's the, you know, where is the setup? Where, not even a bit of barbed wire. That's what's going to happen. You can't allow to have no denial for the crouch walks against someone like ShyCo. Well, that's a rookie mistake.
Yep, ShyCo is able to reap the netted rewards here, and they have a lot of time to play with, and without any of the drama last time round. Yes, the blitz is massively hurt, but with a 5-3, they don't need to be the required point man that the shield often is. They can be a bit cautious as the players tip their way out. The Nitro gets the double! Efak and Solotov removed from the board. The Thatcher gone, and the Ram as well. So the Boogie Drones would have got some work done, but they're just going to be hunting now through the soft, still droning out. 40 seconds, and with a steady break on, they'll know exactly where the Deimos wants this engagement from too, and they've just popped into dirt. They're not going to risk it. They know they've been given a breath of air, and they are taking it as deep in their lungs before they hold on for this final 30 demo. Another C4, and they just battered down the hatches here on the backboards. Snuck their way in towards the site, but they don't have the crossfight, although they maybe do with the pre-fire spray. ShyCo baits the motion. They have the watch on towards dirt, and there is the free pickup, leaving just Teb left for seconds, and he is nowhere close. Bride and ShyCo, they've somehow netted it!
Oh, dear. Right. I mean, first of all, that showcases the quality of that team, right?
Yeah.
Because one, poor round it was, because the C4's coming in, shouldn't be happening. You're dealing with things that, you know, you should be expecting on the basement. You know, C4s are obviously going to be something that defenders will use against you. But it is a case where Shaiko's just thought, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And he makes that play. You either make the play makes you. Classic phrase from myself, you know that.
Classic demo phrase that I have used on cards, yeah.
Yeah. And you need to just go for it, yeah? And Shaiko did that. He took things into his own hands. He wasn't waiting around. He just went for it. You know, Bride, obviously, having that synergy with him, knows what angle he needs to cover. Some teams in the world where things are not going well for them, they still find a way. And Falcons, obviously, is one of those sides. Very, very lucky, I think, Falcons. You know, even the start, you know, the fact that even Users was alive in that opening engagement is, you know, he was 1 HP. Sure, the C4 kills him in the end, but it didn't really matter. He was out of the game at that stage. But yeah, I mean, what a roller coaster match call. They kicked themselves thinking, how have we lost that? Considering that they literally had nothing. You know, triple wall was completely shut. All they had was kitchen hatch open. That is all they had. And they still lost that round. So match call will be very, very upset that they've lost that. Whereas the Falcons should be saying, Shaiko, thank you for being you.
This is a different update. Leo also messaged me about the language, but it wasn't about pronouncing it in French. It was just saying in response to Anne taking the French word, as always, the Dutch borrowing words from the French. So there you go. I'm just going to let those two fight and await a message from Fresh. Now at this point, and then maybe the observers as well. Two apiece.
You'll receive a message from Fresh and it'll not say, oh, Fresh on Dessa's message. It'll say, Fresh on Sofa. You've received a message from Fresh on Sofa.
You've received a message from Fresh on Sofa. It's so back is the message that I'm hoping. Two apiece now, and well, MACKO, as you said, you know, they got a couple of lucky bites. It was all from the side of C4s. They got themselves those, and that was really it. And those are not anything you can build a fluid defense around. That might be, but not that way. Akwi turned into a fire and turned himself background, but got the opening kill. Is being tracked, has a lot of pressure onto him, and somehow slips out of it and goes down twice. What an escape.
Again, for Falcons, EFAC dies by himself, and nobody is there for the trade. Massive issue that Falcons has had over the past 2 days is just that, you know, giving away really cheap kills and getting nothing in return. And Akwi, you know, he's done amazing just to get out of there, but he's still alive. He's still an issue. You know, Shaiko's had to use another track on him as well. He's had to use 2. You know, the second one really didn't do anything. Just lets them know, yeah, he's still down there. You know, they can't go for him at this stage. They don't have the time to commit. And now you're starting to see, I would say, desperado plays from Falcons. I mean, Solotov just blindly walking in through garage, just attempting to swing on the catwalk. Very lucky he's not been killed by maybe somebody else, but, you know, it just screams desperation from Falcons for me.
This is it now with 30 seconds left. They're going for the breach here on towards the construction side, and the fire and the smoke are starting to pop, so it's turning into a miasma of pain. But they have to wait, they have to hold, they have to hop and hope, and there's at least a drop and a trade out. There's Ghost getting one on the far side, but now as Users screams his way across the CC side of the site. They've got the plant covered partially, but no, without the control below. And behind Bride, one breath away from the end as Users just keeps on going. That is his round, Falcons, and you are lucky for him.
So, I mean, again, the siege, it's not pretty from Falcons, it's not. Relying, once again, on a player just making a play. That's what it was. Uses, smokes off the headles and garage, thinks, right, I'm just going to jump in, kill the guy radio. Could have got killed from a lot of different angles there, but still, he has to make an attempt. Goes for it, picks up 4 in the round. You know, that's what separates, you know, the tier of this team compared to everyone else in the league, is that they have these players where they can just go off crazy like that, you know? And again, for Falcons, how long does that magic last for? You know, how long can you just rely on, you know, the setup of your rounds not being very good and just hoping that somebody's going to go big?
Oh, you can't. It's exactly what I said about the C4s not being the sort of reliable play in the terms of the MACKO defense of the previous round, nets kills. It's the same here. You cannot rely on things that are thrown into the aether. You cannot rely on somebody being on their game, somebody being on their day, because the best people in the world at anything, any sport, any discipline will have off days. It just happens. And, well, that's the things that sometimes fall into the laps of planning strategies. 3-2 Falcons. They've been able to pull themselves ahead, and obviously it's the other side of things, right? We talk about Virtus.pro having a flawless defense yesterday and today. Falcons, they did not get a single attack yesterday against them, so this is a marked and massive improvement. Different map, different opponents, and they are against MACKO, which is obviously one of those teams that fought their way up from the Challenger Series.
Yeah.
So it's always worth sort of noting that on paper, Siege isn't always played on paper, but on paper, it's one of the best teams in the world against the team that's here to cut their teeth and prove it. And, well, Falcons might be starting to put pen to that paper.
I will argue and I will say that MACKO, I feel, have been a side that have been just kind of loitering about, waiting to get, you know, their chance into the Tier 1 league for a while. Because, if promotion was a thing earlier, they would have been in this league 2 years ago.
I mean,
I honestly believe that.
You and I were there at SI 2019, I think it was, in Paris, where at least Lolo and Acme...
2021.
2021, that was it. COVID times, crazy. And I'll get back to this story in a second as they break their way through with some attention there from the Iana. They're putting pressure on towards the back of the gym corner. The drones are rolling their way out. Falcons, we asked for them to have a little bit more of a structure towards their take. They're being very structured at this point, but Shaiko's concerned about somebody popping around the back end here. You can see that they're sort of just running the numbers here, Demo Falcons.
Yeah, again, Falcons, I think they're just after kind of that opening pick, but nobody from MACKO is going to give them that chance. You can see they're all in very passive positions. They've kind of starting to form up triangles that I like to see, where that triangle, each person will have two people supporting them and vice versa. It makes things a lot easier whenever you're looking for those trades. And finally, we see Falcons, they get that opening pick, they get that kill that they need, and a good player as well. They take out Akku, who's the top performer currently in the side of MACKO. And yeah, I mean, this is classic from Falcons. They get that first pick, they start seeing weaknesses, gaps start to appear, and then they just clean house.
Well, the round comes to a bit of a startling end, and the half does as well, a 4-2. And I will quickly finish both, actually, of the overhanging stories, the Chekhov's parts that I've put into place. One, they were part of that team, Makers, back then in 2021 SI, that had an unbelievable run. Gemini as well, who is the coach of this team, was a part of that roster. If you are going to point out that they have been a team that has been knocking on the door of success, that was a time where they didn't just knock on the door, they kicked it down, started playing some wonderful Italian music for everybody, and showed what can happen. And it was an outstanding sort of moment. And as you're entirely right, they have always been around the area.
Yeah, obviously, yes, they've never played in Tier 1, but they've been playing against Tier 1 for ages, you know, obviously in scrimmages and stuff like that. You know, obviously in different other competitions, whenever we've seen, you know, a couple of the Tier 1 teams, you know, they were fielding kind of academy teams, but then they still had some, you know, Tier 1 players in it. You know, Secret, for example, you know, they had like Adrian, June playing with, you know, 3 guys out of the academy. You know, they'll be used to playing against, you know, these Tier 1 players also at an official level. So yeah, I just think for MACKO, there's nothing too crazy for them. I think it's a different story with the guys in Wild, for example, because they really are new, whereas the MACKO guys, not as much.
I'm going to finish the other story that I had overhanging, then we'll talk about the bans. I did end up getting a message from the Observer and from Fresh. From Easy, they said, I can fight Leo, in some words. And then Fresh, well, he'll point out that it doesn't matter because Fresh just said, I think Anne has killed Leo. So, I also got a message from Lynx as well, who says, French and the Dutch beefing, welcome back 1600s, which is maybe the most Lynx message I think anyone can get where they start to talk about history.
Yeah, yeah, very good with the history.
Loves a good book.
Loves it. Yeah. So the bans, as you wanted to mention, Cade and obviously the Azami, no surprise, just really good defenders. We previously mentioned this in our last game. On the other hand, for Falcons, double hard breach. You've got the ace, you get the thermite out of there, so naturally hard breach gadgets are going to have to be implemented, which you can see that the Deimos has had to bring in the hard breach gadgets. Typically an operator that we would see with nades, because nades combo very well with the gadget. Whenever you know where somebody is, a nade to root them out of a position is pretty good. And Lolo, though, takes a very early rest because it seems to be a quick rush. Very similar to what kind of, Falcons attempted in their first round, but very similar to Falcons. It kind of came to a halt because they lost that blitz right from the rip.
I mean, what a lockdown that they sort of had there. And obviously, it was a very different hold here from Falcons compared to the rush round. And it almost feels like MACKO didn't quite read what was ahead of them. They just wanted to see if they could try and shake against it. But you got the Goyo canisters, the C4 over the top. Most of, if not all, the players were down in the basement at the start of the round anyway. It didn't feel like they went, this is the hold, let's do this to smash it. They went, we're going to do it. And it's not quite worked. Shaiko gets one more here and leaves just Teb and Akwi. A Nomad and a Glaz. Nope. A Nomad and nobody else. In a 5 versus 1, about to be surrounded. And they get a flawless round here. BDS, yes they can.
Wow. Yeah. Pretty much just go back to the first round. We're kind of getting my debrief from the round. That's pretty much what's happened again. Falcons on their toes, ready to go, not letting something like a first-minute rush catch them by surprise. What is it today with the blitz play today from both of these games? I've not been too impressed, I must say. The blitz players have not been on their game. Obviously, Joystick, whenever the desk mentioned about him and blitz, he just face-palmed himself and even used this in the first round, uses against that Mew. Oh, I don't know what it is about blitz today. People are struggling.
It's I just goodbye.
C4.
I mean, it's a good lockdown play there from Falcons, and it's almost like the problems, and I guess this is a greater question of Siege itself, which has changed as metas have picked apart, and we've had strong defense metas, strong attack metas either way, but there is that pressure that gets removed when you're on your defense of, okay, we have time to lay out our plan and let's see how the plan works. You don't have to be so active in your response, which is where we saw Falcons struggling. I think it's fair to say in the opening half, some of those rounds definitely a little bit more touch and go, definitely playing on towards the unbelievable skills of the players, not to discredit them in any way, but it just shows that if they didn't quite have that, rounds could have gone away. We've talked about that before. The defense gives them a little bit more just breathing room here, and surely it should just be an easy ride out to the end of this series.
Yeah. Because Mira's been allowed up, I mentioned before about Mira on these external walls upstairs are a big issue because they have this kind of opening, and you can see Shaiko has just been able to get 2 from rafters, killing 1 in garage, the other by swinging that Mira that's open that again makes that breach so difficult. Really at this stage you've lost the Maverick and you've lost the Habana. Surely that round's done. It has to be done. What possibly can MACKO do now by pushing in through single doorways against Mira windows? What can they do? Has to be done. There's no way.
I was going to say, do you want a short list or the long list? Because, well, there's not really a list at this point. The motion is making their way around towards Lolo gets 1, but I don't think they expected Looking Back to be there. And there was a quick bit of action. Yeah, the C4 does secure Ghost. Leaves Teb alone out in the reeds by themselves. Drifting at least to somewhere where they feel like there's not going to be an immediate bout of pressure behind them. They're instead going to step up. Now, we've seen everything and anything happen in Siege before, but on this site, in a 3 versus 1, at this point, they could just play behind Breed A on that C4. They're not going to, because that would be crazy. They have a 3 versus 1. Hold Logi, hold the swing on the door, and hold showers, and you have this locked down. But it shows that they have options here. The hot pings are coming on a single player. They're going to go into it, and they do get Solitov. Sturdy removal. And a lot of time here, Demo.
Yeah, as long as they just play the trade. I mean, just sit beside one another player. an unwinnable crossfire that just Teb cannot do anything against. That's all they need to do, but don't give him ones. You know, don't be in a position where he can easily pre-fire you. All you have to do is just hang back.
No, come on, Falcons. Teb gets the third, and you know, Teb is playing this well, but you look at the health, and I said they could just play behind Brede and his C4, but at this point, I didn't mean like this, Falcons. Brede is a big clutch player, but it really should have been a lot less painful to get here, and it's not quite done yet. Pre-fires the angle, but Brede holds the nerve, and again, I said there's less pressure on them, but it doesn't mean switch off, Falcons.
Look, should have won the round. Yes, they did win the round, but in the fashion that they have been able to win it, not the greatest there from Falcons, you know, even to get it down to that is, yeah, not great. How's your Italian?
E questo adesso ultimo tentativo di Teb l'ha
As good as it is in Inglorious Bastards.
Fate le cose organizzate e insieme, di squadra. Non provate a risolvere il round da solo, perché non funziona. È un 50 e 50. Puntualmente finisce così. Quindi giocate di squadra, collatevi che cazzo fare. La strat deve essere chiara, non può essere che non sappiamo all'ultimo dove minchia sponiamo. Non provate a vincere il round da solo. Non dovete piccare, andate in maniera molto calma. Fatevi la vostra strat che le kill ve le regalano. Andate più con calma, ma deve essere chiara e giocate di squadra.
I speak third best Italian. Where are you?
I'm no good.
Okay. You're a movie fan. I assume you've seen that film.
Yeah.
Dominic De Coco.
Attackers have dropped the
Once more.
Dominic De Coco.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so 5-2, and again, you know, it's not that MACKO are entirely being outclassed here. The scoreline isn't fair to them, I think is very fair to say. But there is also still that pressure, right? If it wasn't Falcons they are up against, if it wasn't a team with these names, with this much accolade, do we think MACKO would have been a little bit more cemented in some of their approaches? Does that sort of unconscious mental game that has plagued many teams against this Falcons roster under their previous iterations and names and orgs and whatever, is that something that unfortunately puts them a little bit at unease?
I actually had a really good discussion with Dez about just the kind of tiers that you see inside of leagues, and you know, where yes, it's all tier 1, but there's kind of like tiers inside tier 1.
Yeah.
You kind of look at EML and you think, yeah, Falcons, Secret, VP, G2, they're kind of like your big hitters, aren't they? You know, the teams who have been to the international stage, the ones that we expect to see there again. And then you kind of have like the challengers who could maybe try and knock one of them off their perch and try and get in there. You know, you're looking at maybe your BDS, for example. And then you kind of have the teams which, again, you're going to have to put down at the bottom, aren't you? And you could make a case saying, oh, we'll just say the two teams that came up, we'll just put them down again. You know, that's a bit of a football way of thinking, though, to be fair. But I don't know. I think MACKO, just because of their playstyle and the kind of team that they are, I think, again, I do think they're a solid enough team who could maybe be a challenger to try and get in, certainly in towards that kind of top 6 echelon.
Well, it's not going to be the start here. Often talked about the reference of a panic Monty. I think, again, that's a demo quote that's come through.
I'm going to have to start billing you for this.
You're going to have to start getting some t-shirts made or something, like Fresh and Friends does. It will be demo and enemies. We have 6-2.
Each shirt has a different quote.
Each shirt has a different quote. And I wouldn't really call this one a panic. It's a known take. It's a known place, but not bringing, you know, potentially the Blackbeard or something else that could be a bit more active. Is the move out here. And I mean, look at that. The utility, I was going to say, doesn't net anything. Nice. And then suddenly, I'm proven wrong. Lolo gets one, Adora gets the other, traded out. It buys them some time, but they've still got all of their Capital bolts to use here to try and force this last player out. Instead, they're actually going to not have the Monty be the drive behind it.
Right now for Falcons, is it a case where, yes, that garage hasn't really worked for them? They're almost desperate to try and get a kill back, but things can go from bad to worse, and that's kind of what's happened with that swing coming in from Usus. And that leaves Solotov in a bit of a sticky position. You've got one guy in the door, you've got the Monty on the other, and it's only just Solotov does take out the Monty. Don't stand up though, the guy's still on your doorway. He's got information on the guy inside of CCTV now. He has the pistol out, but there's the man walking up the garage stairs, able to get him. Nice attempt there from Solotov, really rocking a hard place there, wasn't it, Fluke?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the first kill went to Solotov, the swing on towards Oil, and you're sort of like, uh-oh, it's happening again. We see the grenades come through, and they didn't net an immediate reward. And you're sort of like, okay, if that was a Blackbeard, they could have maybe punished on the back of that themselves. But instead, it was MACKO sort of getting themselves into position outside the breach to bait the player to come back in. Not entirely sure whether the other kill happened at the same second, but Maverick and the Valk are our next removal. And that was the first kill on towards Oil. And here, so EFAC moves away, and then they catch him on the way back. It was a crossfire. And a risk that didn't quite net a reward there. 6-3. Not done yet, but still distance to go, Demo.
Yeah. Still a lot of work that MACKO need to do. Obviously, we really haven't seen, you know, like a fantastic basement defense yet, have we? Because it's either been the attackers have won just from some individual brilliance, or we've seen the attack just attempt a very poor rush attempt. You know, we haven't really seen the, I want to say, traditional approach of attacking this basement. So I would like to see a much more kind of slower paced round here from MACKO. Don't attempt that rush again. Just play it by the book, because the book usually does work. Again, I know you can make the argument if you play too basic against the top teams, they will absolutely crush you. Yes, that's true, but I feel as though this bomb site in particular, if you do follow the book, if you follow the checklist, and you have all these different angles covered off, really not much any team can do. You know, the bomb site ain't too difficult.
Boogie Drone starts to make its way across. They're not risking the danger, but they almost find the fight, and well, they said they weren't risking it, and it wasn't the worst idea to go for that engagement. They're not entirely dead and down and out, but it's going to slow down some of this approach. They're sort of weighing the options. They're worried about Solotov going for more. He's been able to nip himself in. He had a strong start, a bit of a dip in performance, but then since has just screamed his way back towards the top of the kill board. C4 ready to loose here. Likafak is just a step too late, hoping they maybe will step out with the goo mine, but as they're droned, I think he's missed this opportunity there, unfortunately. Teb almost ran into it after it exploded, though. That would have been bad.
Yeah, I mean, what a turnaround, though, for Solotov. 3-8 yesterday, into 14-8 now. Very unlucky not to get that 15th kill, but you never know. He may still get Ghost yet, who actually has been stimmed up back to HP again, because the Fink has been brought in. Again, you assume it's going to be two things. One, an operator with grenades, which you always need one of them. And also, I suppose, a comfort pick, maybe for Akbi, because he really hasn't gotten any kills, I don't think, since the sides have switched. So he needs a bit of help.
At this, with a minute 10, the shield's still on the board, and oh wait, every other single player. We think about how many times we've been down in this basement, and everybody's been pretty much dead at this point. A lot of rush attempts, and finally, that sort of deadlock is broken, but not in the way MACKO would have liked. They have lost their Hibana, they have lost their hard breach, and at this point, they're just going to be trying to operate on what they've already got done. With this little amount of time left, you hope enough, but oh no, having to punch your way through castle barricades. Nothing anybody wants to make a hobby, because it allows the smoke to just do this. Wait, prepare, and pop it. So as soon as that flesh went down, well, nothing was going to come on the back of it.
Yeah, and that mirror window is just going to deny anyone playing over towards bottom main stairs. So having that cut off towards the long corridor to kind of split the bomb site in two, that's not going to happen for them. However, though, what a pick, though, from MACKO. Takes down that mirror. That kind of ground could be taken now by the Blitz.
Well, the Blitz is screaming their way in, but the fire's about to pop on pipes, and Shaiko dreads through Lolo. Solotov gets Akwi. Nadora's trying to do their best to keep them going, but look at the time, Demo. Ghost can't even hit the site in time at this. Falcons fail failure to launch yesterday, but the bird screams to the skies today.